It's all about AI, so please give a massive welcome to Vasco from Unbabel.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Vasco, I'm co-founder and CEO of Unbabel. What we do is basically we're solving the problem of people speaking different languages, right? And if you think about it, this is not something that's going to change anytime soon. Most of you speak English, hopefully, but that's not the case with the rest of the world, right? And we're not going to all start speaking English suddenly, and we're not going to all start speaking all languages. So this is a problem that actually affects a lot of businesses when they try to do cross-border commerce, for example, right? So if you think about it, Europe, it should be a great example of how languages aren't a barrier, and yet, if you look in Europe, even though we have, from a regulatory perspective, everything is solved and trade should be easy, only 12% of online retailers actually sell stuff for other countries, and only 15% of us buy stuff from other countries. So clearly language is a huge issue here, right? And now the question is, how come in the world that we are today, in 2017, this is still an issue? So we think that what's going to happen is that very shortly in the future, we're going to have what we're calling the world's translation layer, right? And this thing is going to be something that's going to be in every app, every screen, every business process. It's going to be customizable. It's going to be adaptable. It's going to have AI, and it's going to deal with every language and every content type. And that's kind of what we're building. And the way we're doing this is we're combining AI and human translation. Now, nowadays you hear AI all the time, so what does this actually mean for us? It basically means that we are taking what we call customer adapter neural machine translation. I know this is a big mouthful, but think of Google Translate, but actually that it's specifically designed and adapted for customer purposes. And we're combining that with a bunch of humans, so we have 55,000 people in the crowd right now, that then iterate and curate and improve the stuff that comes from the machine translation, and then that data in turn gets reused so that the system gets improving, keeps getting better and better. So we fundamentally believe that the solution for this is a hybrid system that uses both humans and AI, right? And I think we are maybe one of the few AI companies that is actually doing something that right now has a product, customers that is being purchased by customers, that is growing, has a business model, et cetera. And so we see AI as an enabler rather than a danger. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is growth, right? So I think the most important thing for growth is to hire the right people, right? Make sure you have the right people around you, ideally people that know more than you do at what they do, right? And if you do that, then everything else kind of follows from that. So for us, we started 4 years ago. We're now 72 people. This year has been an explosive growth. We went from 25 people in the beginning of the year to 72 people now. And what I notice now at the stage that we are post-Series A is that things change, right? So the things that you do in the beginning, where you're just struggling and you're trying to figure out some way of making things happen, changes once you have a little bit more resources and you start becoming an organization, a company, right? And that structural part of how you actually continue to grow and how do you continue to find new ways of expanding to markets, it's all about getting the right expertise on board. So that's my biggest advice, just find the right people and make sure that they know what they're doing. And then, make sure they're happy working at something that is worth working on.
Thanks, Vasco. Next up, we have Pedro from HyperScience.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Peter from HyperScience. We basically... Hold on a second. Do you know what to do with the clicker? Sorry, just a second. All right, let's try this again. So basically, HyperScience is a company that takes this and tries to turn it into this. We automate incredibly boring back office kinds of things like data entry, which is currently done all by hand. This is literally a picture of our product. We take a form, a scan of a form, and we convert it into JSON, which is just machine-readable content. So it comes in human-readable, comes out machine-readable. This is sort of a peek under the hood in terms of what our technology does. So in the red box, you see a bit of handwritten text. You see how HyperScience transcribes it. You see how some of the competition transcribes it. It's challenging for a whole host of reasons that I'll get into, but ultimately at the crux of it is that to understand what a piece of handwriting says, you have to know something about what it should say, what it can say. So we are at the intersection of the hard, the valuable, and the incredibly boring. It's hard because it is literally beyond the cutting edge of technology. It's valuable because it saves our customers millions of dollars a year, and it's truly thankless work. This, by the way, is a picture of a gold mine. And it's incredibly boring because no one jumps out of bed and says, golly gee, today's the day I'm going to work on forms, partially because no one says golly gee anymore, but partially because working on forms is incredibly unexciting at a surface level. Ultimately, HyperScience is bringing boring back. Boring is the new black. It's timeless. And it's kind of like an unmarked door to a secret club. It looks pretty uneventful on the outside. On the inside, we think it's incredibly exciting, really nice. And the reasons for that is because the opportunity is massive. If you have a small army of people doing the kind of work that we automate, the value in automating it is the value of automating anything. You get the same job done better, faster, and cheaper. Today, this is what the job looks like, which has all of the, looks an awful lot like this, minus the charm. It's valuable for a host of other reasons. So if you're working on turning around a life insurance application to one of your customers and you've got to process the paperwork, you can't get in front of your customers before you've turned that paperwork around. And so if you're able to process it that much faster, you're able to close new business that much faster. If you're doing anything that is medical related, you can have a dramatic impact on the quality of life just by doing paperwork a little bit better. And if you're doing something really important, like you need to approve urgent care, you can literally, in the literal sense of literally, end up saving lives just by approving paperwork a little bit faster. One of the reasons this is a good business for us to be in is that we don't ask our customers to imagine anything new. We just do what they've always done, except we automate it. And we will continue to develop our product roadmap in the unthinkably, unspeakably uninteresting. If you have any questions about what we do, please contact Anna. She runs business development at HyperScience. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Next up, we have Mark from Bonsai, so please give him a warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. So I want to talk to you today about Bonsai. Bonsai is an applied artificial intelligence platform company. And what that means is that we make it possible for all of you to build intelligent applications without having to become data scientists or machine learning experts yourselves. We do that through a somewhat unique approach, and that is born on a very simple but profoundly impactful insight, and that is that by design, all these machine learning algorithms are learning systems. And no matter how smart you make them, we have to teach them. Teaching is a necessary complement to learning, and very, very little attention is actually paid to how you teach these systems effectively. So at Bonsai, what we do is we give you a machine teaching platform so that you can bring your subject matter expertise, your domain expertise to bear when you build these systems out. What that looks like in terms of who we're targeting right now is largely intelligent industrial control systems. This is an area that is vastly underserved at the moment. It cannot be addressed using traditional data-oriented techniques. It's one thing for me to give you a giant array of pictures of cats and ask you to learn that, yes, these pictures map to cats. When you look at a novel picture, can you map it to a cat? It's another thing to say, I have a giant piece of heavy industrial manufacturing equipment, and I know what the output I want at the end is, but I cannot tell you at any instantaneous moment what the motor torque values should be to get to that result. How do you learn that? It requires a different technique. This technique is called deep reinforcement learning. And so we bring these two things together to really enable that ripe area to really solve their problems effectively. What this ends up looking like in the product is a lot like a database, and we'll often say we do for AI what databases did for data. If you think about databases for a moment, there was a time before they were so common that everyone took them for granted, where if you wanted to build an application that worked with data in a sophisticated way, you had to worry about a lot of low-level details. You had to worry about the data structures you would use. If it's a tree, when am I going to rebalance it? How do I span multiple disks? These are all super low-level concerns that have nothing to do with the actual business problem you're trying to solve. Databases helped address this quite nicely, and they didn't do it by giving you a toolkit that collected together all those algorithms you might want to use. They did it instead by giving you an abstraction. That abstraction took the form of a new programming language like SQL, where you could express the intent, the structure of the data, the kinds of questions you want to ask of it. We do the same thing, we just do it for AI. So we give you a new programming language called Inkling. With Inkling, you are codifying what you want to teach and how you teach it. You can connect a variety of training sources, typically simulations in our case, of these physical systems. And then the platform will actively manage the actual training for you as a compile time operation. You do not specify this is what the neural network should be, and this is its layout, and et cetera, et cetera. That's a compile time operation. The same way that you don't generate assembly code, you write Python now. We enable you to get to that level. And that enables us to work with a variety of these industrial companies to build out really sophisticated systems. I'll pick just one in the interest of time to highlight here, which is a system we're building with Siemens around CNC manufacturing equipment. So giant computer numeric controlled equipment, manufacturing $40,000 aircraft parts. They can use this system built on top of ours to capture their subject matter expertise around friction compensation and other facets like that, and then build out systems that can automate these machines, calibrate them, and do that in an automated way where it takes a human expert on the order of several hours. They can now do that on the order of tens of minutes, 4 to 5 times faster on average in a completely automated way than a human. So there's a variety of these kinds of applications you can build out, and Bonsai is a platform that enables subject matter experts broadly to tackle their problems, to build intelligent systems without having to be that machine learning expert or data science practitioner. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Finally, please welcome Roger from ProFinda to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Great. So Roger from ProFinda. Not very good at making PowerPoints, clearly. But the problem we're solving is we have a rather ambitious look at life. So I'm looking at lots of lovely people, lots of beautiful people. The reality is, even though we're wandering around shaking lots of hands, we still don't know each other. 60,000 people at this event. My view is there's someone somewhere in this event that really would make you £1 million, £10 million next year if you could find them, but you won't. Probably won't. Now, our lens right now is large corporate. So we build AI and machine learning platform that goes into some of the world's largest companies and largest organizations. And the principle is to be the who engine across these networks, because what our view is these companies, these networks are brimming with unbelievable people, but there's a disconnect. So by working behind the scenes, what we do is we build this neural network. We build essentially a knowledge graph, and then you can leverage that. So as a quick example, by typing in a sentence, it understands, using a bit of NLP as well, what you're really asking for. And by mapping the entire organization, be that your internal company, your contingent workers, your alumni network, millions of people potentially, you've now got the who engine that goes into the how. And this is kind of a big deal because it's the whole point we're here, right? And it's the whole point when we're at work, we're trying to connect people to work more intelligently. So it's an exciting space to be in. Just to whiz through, sort of touching on what I think are 7 hacks to B2B growth. Now, the reality is we're selling unknown, partially unproven technologies. The world's most complicated, regulated companies ain't easy. So step 1 is somehow, and I again apologize for the formatting here, it's not worked. Over the first few years of our life, we basically had to, through blood, sweat, and tears and twisting a lot of arms, get some of our tech in some companies just to prove something works. Based on that, what happens is, again, I'll talk you through it because the font's gone crazy, is you work with associates who are the market leaders out there that get the vision, who can visually buy into that process. You won't find more than 6, maybe 12 at best, because any more, it's not a real relationship. You need them to be out there working for you. Followed by, we are in itself a marketing platform, so we can actually use our tool to power massive communities that are strategically relevant to us, and by virtue, they get something from it as well. The next thing is we found ourselves at places like Davos. We've been advising at the White House, all these places which allow us to have a little bit more credibility. Next point as we speed up is influencers, work with the channel markets, which is where we are now, and ultimately get through to the point where you can integrate with the likes of the SAPs and Microsofts. So I'll stop there, and that's a little view of us.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Roger. As we're a bit tight for time, we may end up having maybe only a couple of questions. But there was one particular question that came from the infamous John Beck, who wanted to know, and I will read this, sorry, don't fuck it up. At the moment, we have a very narrow AI system that's very much task-specific, almost like self-driving cars. How close are we to developing artificial general intelligence that can accomplish a breadth and variety of cognitive tasks similar to that of people? And how can we ensure that the power of AGI will benefit the world and not just the group who develops it first? And finally, will AGI become an existential threat for humanity or an existential hope? Great question.
So I think we're not close, and in my perspective, it will be an existential hope. I think actually humans and AI will be merging together, and we will become the AI.
I'd say that the list of things that AI is already better at than humans keeps growing. And so while it's true that you've got application-specific applications, at what point does that list become longer than the list of things that humans are good at?
So I would agree generally that we are a bit of a ways off from that. However, the essence I would want to get across here is when we think about AGI, people immediately jump to conscious machines making their own decisions. We don't frequently want conscious machines. You don't want to walk up to your refrigerator and have it say, I'm not going to open because you should be eating a salad right now, not cake, right? Like, you don't want that. And what we want are more intelligent tools. Pardon?
Some of us would want that.
Some of us might want that, that's true, but you don't want the refrigerator, well, fair enough. At any rate, the key here is that you want to be able to have the system be a tool, a more intelligent tool, and that really comes down to, again, hence our focus at Bonsai, what is it you want to teach and how do you teach it? Consciousness is good for when you need a system to dynamically adapt to the teaching that's happening, but for mostly tools, which is what we're after, then you want to be able to direct more and more and more intelligent behavior. So as children, when we grow up, until you're about 3 years old, everything is so well understood what the path is supposed to be that if you're a little bit off from that path, the doctors will bring you in and say, hey, we're a little worried about this. The development is not tracking with where it's supposed to be. After you hit about 3 years old, then it's largely self-directed, right? So what if you could take that system where you have that innate instinct-driven, how do I get better at what I'm doing, and extend it even further so that you have that all the way driven for advanced calculus and manufacturing and whatever it is you want to do. That's where we need to take AGI-style technologies. We don't necessarily need to take it to the, and now you can go and become an intelligent agent on your own.
But I think a lot of times when people ask this, they're genuinely kind of concerned about like when will we hit singularity, right? I mean, like when will we have a machine that thinks like us, right? And like becomes sci-fi, right? I think we're not close to that because we don't understand even how we think about like how our brain actually works, right?
I'll just jump in quickly. So I think what's always missing from a conversation about technology is psychology. So it will be quite interesting to apply the logic in there about social psychology and behavioral psychology, because that's kind of where we begin. That's where the model starts. And we ain't changed for 70,000 years, and we won't for a very long time. And what I'm fascinated by AI and machine learning, we know that the domain of repetitive work is going to go to the automation and so on. But my lens is thinking about the future of work meets society. And I think I see a very neat three circles. So one circle is all of corporate, the other circle is communities and networks, and the other circle is philanthropy. And if you think about that as a Venn diagram, the center point is society and government. And what's fascinating is thinking about Elon Musk talking about the basic income levels. When you think about Gates thinking about taxing robots and automation, you actually have a really interesting model to put this new army of workers, but to use to actually get them interested in society. And there's a thing called neuroplasticity. So the mind will literally rewire to mimic positive behaviors in others. So if we go on that journey, we're going to set ourselves up for the most exciting thing. But
yeah, I mean, for me, the argument that I think speaks, like the simplest arguments I can see is that every time that we increase technological development in human history, we increase GDP, and every time GDP increases, there's more jobs. So I don't know which jobs will be, right? But I know that AI is increasing our ability to create value, and that's going to increase GDP, and somehow there's going to be more jobs. Maybe it could be that because people have more money to spend on services, and they will need services that somehow will be executed by humans. I don't know. But in all of human history, more GDP equals more jobs.
So in general, the point that you're emphasizing here, which I think we can make very crystal clear, is that AI is a technology, and that if you look over the history of our species, technology has always driven this. It's not about AI as the technology, it's about technology in general. AI happens to be the one that is at the forefront at the moment, and so everyone's got it top of mind. And so I would tend to agree with you. There's way more opportunity that will be created. We even have the potential to go from an economy of scarcity, where we're at now, to an economy of abundance, which fundamentally changes a lot of things, and you end up having the conversations around universal basic income and so on when you start to entertain those notions. But in general, the fear around when does the singularity come, the point I guess I'm trying to get across is we are sufficiently far away, and there will be a sufficient conversation that happens as we track towards that will be a choice. We're not going to wake up one day and, oh my God, the computers are all smarter than humans, what are we going to do? We'll see it coming, and we will be able to make the decisions about what we want to do about that. It will be a conversation that we as a species have, and we as an industry have. It's not just going to be a movie-like moment where you turn it on and 10 minutes later, humanity's doomed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, I think that before we get to a point where AI becomes conscious, we will merge with AI, meaning, I think, right now we're already working, like how many of you remember cell phone numbers, right? I mean, they're all already in a machine. How many of us can work without computers? That's already happening, right? And I think the key for me is the brain-to-computer interface. And once that happens, I see much more as us as maestros of different AIs and becoming embedded, and the ability to produce more and to reach more because of AI, but in a way becoming more and more enmeshed. So I think before AI becomes sentient, we will, opportunistically take over that.
It may also never happen because there's no reason that AI should ever resemble human intelligence. The evolutionary pressures that it faces are fundamentally different from the ones that we faced. AI is meant to serve ads faster or more relevant ads, and I don't recall us ever being under that kind of pressure. And so the kind of intelligence that we will develop with AI will be fundamentally foreign and perhaps even unrecognizable. So if the singularity comes, we might not even know that it has come.
Yeah, I mean, though, at the risk of being provocative, you could say that in a certain period of human history, humans were seen as meant for serving, to do tasks, right? If you look at slavery, et cetera, right? And yet, I think once you have conscience, I think that's the key, right? We don't understand what conscience is, but once you do, it's hard for me to imagine that whatever possesses conscience will not be driven by the same evolutionary forces that other conscient beings have been.
Well, there's the other interesting view that we have is if you think about the process between humankind, we're actually here for self-serving purposes, right?
It's a beautiful gene,
right? And the reality is, if you've done a process that we've taken, I mean, the cognitive explosion took place 70,000 years ago. We've been around for a few million. So if you fast forward, if you think about Douglas Adams' notion about the Earth is just a big computer program test, right? I can't imagine that the ultimate version of where we get to beyond singularity is one where machines think it's better to be a dominant thing, even to themselves, right? So I think that's where we're heading. But the backdrop I find equally interesting is, I don't know if you guys know Jeremy Rifkin, but the notion that there are three infrastructures that are coming together right now, so technology, transportation, and energy, and obviously Elon Musk is doing quite well in two of them. That's the big paradigm shift, and that's what actually embraces a new industrial revolution. I think that's where that moment will come in line with actually the new stage of AI.
Thanks, guys. Unfortunately, we have to cut it there because we're out of time. I could have listened to that all day. So again, thank you so much. Great panel. Again, thanks, guys. Yeah, if I could also just let everybody know that there's one more panel left, so if you can just remain seated, that'll be great.